Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Sedan channel. My friends, I want to encourage you to not risk your XRP by leaving it on cryptocurrency exchanges. I'm going to show you a few things in this video. First of all, proof that a ton of XRP holders are realizing the degree to which this is a serious call to action. The whole FTX collapse, I think that's what's very clear. It's what spurred this movement. And I've never seen such a major move of people creating their brand new XRP accounts for self-custody. The only time I've seen greater creation of accounts, and it wasn't because there were scary things like this, it's just because there's an influx of people jumping into crypto. That was back in 2017 when you had that insane altcoin rally and XRP hit its all-time high. Other than that, this is insane. It's unprecedented. And so as bad as the FTX and that little butt nugget SBF is, the whole fiasco, the fraudulent Ponzi scheme, as terrible as it is, the silver lining is that it's kind of like the kick in the rear that a lot of people need. It's getting people to move their XRP off of all sorts of different cryptocurrency exchanges the world over. People I'm sure lost XRP on FTX, but I'm saying this has been a call to action. And now this comes in the midst of major cryptocurrency exchanges, including Coinbase and Binance, saying, hey, no, it's safe, everything's fine. In fact, we're going to prove our reserves. But is it really enough just to show that you've got a wallet there with so-and-so amount of a cryptocurrency? Well, according to the co-founder of cryptocurrency exchange Kraken, the answer is no, that's actually not enough. And he explains why an audit just showing that would be completely insufficient. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. Now look, I've been in crypto over 5 years. I jumped in November 10th, of 2017. I first bought XRP a week later, November 17th, 2017. And I got my XRP, admittedly I had a lot less back then, but I got my XRP off of exchange before the end of 2017. In fact, if memory serves, I have to go back and look, it might have been earlier on New Year's Eve, during the day portion of New Year's Eve, that I actually finally made sure that I got all of it off. So I got my Ledger Nano S, I figured out how to do it, moved it all, and then I've been going in that direction ever since. So I haven't been keeping XRP on exchanges for the entirety of the time I've been holding XRP, other than right after I hold it, I for a very short-lived period, find it sitting there technically, but then I move it to cold storage because I don't want anybody to have control over my XRP. And yes, I acknowledge that there's a certain risk because I'm responsible for my private key, and if I lose my private key, there's no customer service to call. I got that. So there's a downside there. But I'd rather have that than the risk of a cryptocurrency exchange becoming insolvent. What if there is another major exchange out there that actually is a Ponzi scheme, or who knows what could go wrong, or if they get hacked? There's too much risk. And so for me, the answer has just been clear from the very beginning. I didn't even think twice about it once I figured this out. It was get my damn XRP off the exchanges. And so I took my time to figure that out. And me dilly-dallying about that was for a span of over a month. So fine, I delayed doing it for over a month. That's not that bad. Some people have been saying that they're going to do it for years and still not do it. But for me, I didn't have that much XRP back then. So even if I had lost it, it's not that I wanted to lose my XRP and I was still buying, but you kind of get the gist of it here. And so to kind of prove the point here, and this is why I wanted to highlight this again, and I'm going to be brief on this because I mentioned this probably within the last week or so. Here's a chart showing the number of new XRP accounts that are created. Now, mind you, that cryptocurrency exchanges will use an account for a ton of different users. That's why you have an ID tag, because it just accounts for which amount of the XRP that's shared in a single account is yours. So as a result of that, as all sorts of new people jump into crypto and start purchasing XRP for the first time, it doesn't mean that necessarily there will be a bunch of new accounts created. Not by most of it anyway. I think most people are just purchasing on exchange, and maybe there are little bits here and there, and they don't want to go through the hassle of figuring out how to self-custody, so they'll just leave it on exchange. which is why if you look at the number of new accounts I think the total number of XRP accounts, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 4.2 million. I think there's way, way, way more humans than that have ever purchased XRP. I just think most people aren't taking self-custody. It's like, is it worth the trouble? Do I have enough to where, like, if I lost it, it's the end of the world? There might be people looking along those thinking along those lines. But I mean, if you look where I'm highlighting right now, this is May 12th, so that was right around the time Luna was collapsing. You see there's a spike in new XRP accounts. That was unrelated to Luna, but people are like, oh yeah, I should probably self-custody. There are all sorts of fears going on. Then you saw June 13th, you saw another spike there. That one I think was Celsius. And then there was this one, July 2nd, another spike in new XRP accounts created, about 2,879 on July 2nd. And that was when I believe Voyager fell apart. But then you can see when FTX fell apart, it's like, man, it ended up spiking in one day. November 13th, 9,934. Now, that's not because we're in bull territory. Normally, like a lot of the time, outside of the scary scenarios, when you see these huge spikes, it's because there's that many new people jumping into crypto, and a certain small percentage of them will take self-custody. In this case, we're in bear market territory. There aren't a bunch of new people jumping into crypto. There's almost no new people jumping into crypto. There's some, but almost none. And so these were people already in crypto being like, oh yeah, I should probably take care of that. And they did. And you can see it's been sustained like almost 10,000 in one day, but even on the 27th, it was 2,592 new accounts. Whereas outside of that, for most of what we've seen, going back to the beginning of May, which is what this chart shows, it was more like anywhere from like 1,100 to 1,200 new accounts per day, because most people are keeping it on exchange. But that's not really safe. So let's highlight this, because, and look, I can appreciate that cryptocurrency exchanges are striving for transparency. We can all get behind that. But is this actually sufficient? Well, first let me share with you what Coinbase and Binance are doing, what they're saying they want to do, and then let me share with you what a co-founder of Kraken, who was the CEO of Kraken actually until he recently left, let me share with you what he says about that. I think he might be sufficiently transparent, especially now that he's not with an exchange. But look at this headline from today from the Daily Huddle. Coinbase launches new initiative to promote crypto exchange transparency and on-chain accounting. And I'll just say this, even if an exchange is completely solvent, things can change quickly. You need to constantly be monitoring that. And even if that's the case, still at any moment, they still have the keys to your crypto. Like, to me, it's just like, Piece reads as follows. U.S. crypto exchange giant Coinbase is launching an initiative to help encourage more transparency among firms in the industry, particularly in regard to proof of reserves. In a blog post, Coinbase says it's exploring new ways to prove reserves using more crypto-native methods, plus announcing a $500,000 developer grant program to encourage others to do so as well. Coinbase says that following the collapse of crypto exchange FTX, investors in the space deserve assurance that they'll have the ability to withdraw their funds after depositing to centralized platforms. The firm lists several general suggestions for how proof of reserves could be done in the future, including on-chain address disclosure with proof of access to the address's private key. And so I'll just say, on the surface, these ideas sound laudable. They sound good, right? Well, says Coinbase Chief Security Officer Philip Martin, quote, "One silver lining in the collapse of FTX is a huge focus on transparency into the assets and liabilities of different crypto firms. At Coinbase, we believe that you deserve the best of both traditional finance and decentralized finance. Today, we are the only company in crypto that is providing the transparency and assurance of a public company financial audit. For tomorrow, we are working toward a decentralized system where you don't have to trust us or any institution. You only need to trust the math. Everything should be transparent, immutable, and verifiable to all." And so again, on the surface, I think we're all going to agree that sounds like a step in the right direction. Wish you'd been doing that from the get-go, but okay, here we are. We got a nascent asset class. And then Binance seems to be saying the same thing. Here's an article from a couple days ago, same story. From the Daily Huddle, crypto giant Binance releases proof of reserve system and push toward transparency. Global crypto exchange giant Binance is releasing a proof of reserve system, that's POR for short, to increase transparency following the FTX implosion. Binance says they are committed to disclosing proof of reserves, which means releasing evidence of a 1-to-1 ratio of reserves to investors' assets. Quote, "Following our recent announcement outlining our commitment to transparency, Binance is releasing its proof of reserve system, which is the next step in our effort to provide transparency on user funds, end quote. And again, like I said, super happy to hear that. But let's go a little bit further. Piece continues. Binance is first releasing Bitcoin data, but in the coming weeks, they plan to release proof of reserves data for other tokens, including Ethereum. Now, Binance says they have a 101% ratio of Bitcoin holdings to customer holdings, with an on-chain reserve of 582,485 Bitcoin to their customer net balance of 575,742 Bitcoin. And that's as of November 22nd. And the company says that the data does not reflect its own corporate funds. Quote, when a user deposits 1 Bitcoin, Binance's reserves increase by at least 1 Bitcoin to ensure client funds are fully backed. It is important to note that this does not include Binance's corporate holdings, which are kept on a completely separate ledger, end quote. So if that's all true, that's fantastic. But again, is that sufficient? Does that actually take into account everything that somebody who's using an exchange like this would want to know if they're actually going to keep crypto on an exchange for any length of time other than, what it takes to purchase and then move it to cold storage? What if you are one of the people who's like, yeah, I'm going to use this as my storage mechanism, which I think is not a good idea, but what if you are one of those people? Well, here's what Jesse Powell had to say. This is he's the co-founder of Kraken and was the CEO until recently. This is a brand new piece from the Daily Hodl titled, Kraken's Jesse Powell says he'll call out problems in crypto, weighs in on exchanges showing proof of reserves. And again, this isn't to crap all over what they're doing. Like, I agree, it's a step in the right direction. But you need to consider something else. As you'll see as we go through this, the answer is you need to consider liabilities as well. And I'm glad that Coinbase at least touched on that. And then there's a consideration past that like, even if they're doing that, things can change quickly. You're still not in control. Like for me, this would still not be sufficient for me to keep any amount of crypto on an exchange for anything other than a very short period. Piece reads as follows. Kraken founder and former chief executive Jesse Powell says he's looking to publicly point out problems in the crypto space, starting with the issue of exchanges sharing their proof of reserves. Following the high-profile collapse of FTX, crypto exchanges have been scrambling to provide evidence of a 1-to-1 ratio of reserves to investors' assets in an effort to increase transparency. And I'll just pause to note, admittedly, if we had this, a bunch of exchanges going down this route, if it had started because a different exchange collapsed before FTX, then if people start knocking on FTX's door like, why aren't you showing the 1-to-1 reserves? We would have had some red flags there, right? Any exchange that's not going to go down this route, I would be very concerned about you if they're not even going to address this, because at a minimum, talk about this and what you're going to do to prove reserve. At a minimum, start talking about it right now, because otherwise, to me, that's just a red flag. Anyway, piece continues. According to Powell, a proof of reserve audit is valid if it comes with proof of client balances and wallet control. Quote, I said I was going to be more assertive with calling out problems. This is one of them. Reserves equals assets minus liabilities. Reserves equals list of wallets. Proof of reserves audit must have 3 things. Number 1, sum of client liabilities. So auditor must exclude negative balances. Number 2, user verifiable cryptographic proof that each account was included in the sum. And number 3, signatures proving that the custodian has control of the wallets, end quote. Yeah, because think about that. They could claim that they have, here's the account. Look at all the Bitcoin we hold, for example. And you could say that that's backed 1-to-1, but what if we don't know the full extent of actual deposits? You have to make sure that that is cryptographically provable to be the case, that does, include the full tabulation. Every customer that has anything on the exchange. So there's a lot of moving parts. This actually, like on the surface, it might sound simple, but it's not necessarily quite as simple as I guess we'd hope it would be. Piece continues. The Kraken founder highlights that using a Merkle tree to allow users to verify the crypto they own on an exchange is pointless, as it does not reveal the centralized platform's liabilities. Merkle trees are data structures that can enable users to quickly verify certain information without showing an entire data set. Exactly. It's like garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have all of the data that you need to in order to come to an honest conclusion of what's going on in an exchange, then it's worthless anyway. You need the entire data set, including liabilities. And that's why with Coinbase, we'll see what ultimately happens with them. I appreciate that they at least verbally articulated, yeah, liabilities matter. You know, like, do you have access to all this? Is it loaned out? Does anybody have any sort of external ownership in any sort of capacity with any of this? You got to prove all these things. Here's another quote from Powell. The Merkle tree is just hand-wavy BS without an auditor to make sure you didn't include accounts with negative balances. The statement of assets is pointless without liabilities. This is simply, here's a hash of your record in the Bitcoin spreadsheet. Okay, but what's the point? The whole point of this is to understand whether an exchange has more crypto in its custody than it owes to clients. Putting a hash on a row ID is worthless without everything else, end quote. And so there you go. All that to say, yes, I hope they go in that direction because more transparency is always better. Even then, I still will never completely trust an exchange, even if I'm a fan of an exchange. And there are exchanges I'm a fan of, but it's still a centralized entity. It is what it is. But all that to say, like, even as there, like, it should be clear. The right thing to do is take self-custody. Probably for almost everybody. I can't imagine a scenario where it would make reasonable sense to not. Unless you are one of those people where you're like, I have almost no of so-and-so crypto. If I literally lost it all, I don't care. So that means you might be a person that's not that into crypto in general. And you're like, I don't want to deal with figuring out the tech side of this for self-custody. And if I just lose it, I lose it. Some people actually have that attitude. If you value your crypto, though, I can't imagine any excuse, for not taking self-custody. And so after everything has happened, like, that's why I wanted to highlight, it's kind of like a silver line for all this. Again, back to this chart here from XRP Scan. All of these new XRP accounts, these are people that move their XRP from exchanges that didn't collapse, that aren't FTX. All of these people, they had their come to Jesus moment. They're like, yeah, I guess I better hold this myself. So it was the kick in the rear that they need, and good. That's good. Sometimes we all need a kick in the rear. I'm not saying that to belittle anybody. There's probably somebody listening who recently moved, and I'm not saying that to, belittle you. I'm saying that to applaud you. Good for you. Sometimes we all need a little kick on the rear side. Sometimes I do in life for various things. That's fine. That's fine. And so maybe this can be a kick in the rear side for somebody here. Just be careful in what you're doing and setting it up if you decide to go that route. There's pros and cons with every choice in life, including self-custody. I'm not pretending there aren't. If you lose a private key, again, that's it. I get it. You lose it forever. But to me, the greater risk would be having crypto you care about on a centralized exchange. That's just my 2 cents on this. You all do what you want to do. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Family Sedan.